moving on to a topic that is a critical board responsibility, succession planning. Compensation committees typically serve a major role in that board responsibility, so I want to turn to each of you for your thoughts on that responsibility. Julie, starting with you, what key steps do you believe compensation committees should take or monitor to best position the board to evaluate successors for key leadership roles?
I think this is critical for every board, and I bet all of you do too. You have to force the issue a lot with some, because I have been in companies or on boards where, to be perfectly honest with you, the CEO doesn't want a successor who's capable because they don't want to go anywhere. And so that makes it a little more difficult. But I mean, you have to keep driving that as a board member, and like you said, it often involves the compensation committee. But I mean, you have to drive that and drive that hard, and you have to ask for updates. You have to make sure that you're seeing the people who are on the succession plan, that you're seeing what they're doing for them internally in terms of education and moving them around to other areas to make sure that they're getting fully developed. I mean, to me, you have to stay on top of that, because not everybody in management wants to do that. And I think it's one of the most important responsibilities for a board, because we've all seen too many companies where all of a sudden the CEO's gone and they're out doing a search. And if we're doing things right, we never have to go out and do a search. We could always promote internally if we've prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I certainly like to promote internally rather than do a search. So.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. Succession planning is a key board role. I think it's a key company role, but yet all of my boards, I feel like we're having to be the stick.
Exactly.
Kind of keep beating it out of them.
Exactly.
It's sort of like, you got to bring this, mm-hmm. And so it is challenging. For us, typically, having line of sight, understanding what the development needs are for the individuals that are there, and then creating opportunities for exposure. I mean, on some we've done mentoring relationships. We have done separate, like we'll go to breakfast with the succession candidates and just sort of meet offline, sort of creating space within the board sessions for them to present, trying to usually means having to get the CEO or CFO to sit down and shut up for a little while and let them talk and let them respond to us pushing them a little bit. But it's work. It's a lot of work, but it's critical. I mean, it's just, trying to make sure that there's, even if you think about it from the context of having emergency candidates, what happens
Right.
in the event, you have a health issue or something like that. I mean, it's always critical. And oftentimes it's creates a lot of anxiety on the management team that, but good leaders, that's what they do. They develop the next generation. They see that coming in and create space for that, and that's what you're trying to encourage.
And so, Julie, I think you made a good point about having internal candidates prepared to step into a role. And at Summit, I heard in a couple of the presentations comments about that if you're doing a search and going outside and looking inside, you have an internal candidate and external, that the rule of thumb that they put out is the external candidate should appear to be 1.5 to 2 times measurably more of a fit than your internal candidate, because you so often will have a mismatch that you didn't anticipate with an external candidate. So given that, the really importance of developing internal candidates, David, how do you look at retention pay or pay in excess of companies' peer benchmark in impacting succession?
Well, so I think first of all, obviously compensation is only one thing. It's an important thing, but it's only one thing that can make sure that you're retaining the people that you need for that next generation of leadership. So from a compensation standpoint, I think retention grants or going beyond what market would tell you to do can do a couple of key things. One is it's another way of communicating to those key individuals that they are important. This is a measurable way to say, we've got our eye on you, you're important for the future, we want you to stay. You're never going to be able to get that number high enough that it's going to completely insulate you from somebody trying to poach someone good. But if you can convey that expectation, that love, if you will, through that compensation, that can help. The other thing is that it can make it more painful for a competitor to try to buy someone out. So as you're thinking about succession planning, one of the things that committees typically will look at is how much unvested value are in the hands of these key people that we have our eye on. What does that look like as a multiple of what they could make in a position that they might step up into at another organization? And how painful would it be for someone to buy out that number?
Yeah, and sort of a flip side to that, Mark, if you could talk about what do you do if you have maybe multiple internal candidates or you don't choose the internal candidate, how do you deal with the desire for retention of the candidate that might not have been selected? And is it wise to try to retain? What do you think about in the boardroom?
Yeah, I mean, usually if you're talking about an internal candidate for a promotion, that says they've got value for you, but if you don't pick them, it's usually, if you're just honest about it, it's because there's some deficiencies in their development. And so a key part of it, we've tried to do this in a couple cases, is first of all, a very honest conversation with them, probably from the board directly. Don't no intermediaries. Have them hear directly from the board about this is, look, we love you, we see a lot of potential, but here's some rough edges that need to be rounded out, or some experiences that we think you need to have. And then I think it behooves the board then to help sort of force or create that opportunity. So that's what we've done. It's just like, okay, sort of push on the management team to say, okay, how can we reshuffle to provide this executive the experience so that we can test them, and validate that they truly are a succession candidate, or we'll all collectively, reach the conclusion that we were right in our judgment and they aren't ready. And then that's another conversation that needs to happen. But honesty is always the best policy. I think first of all, just have the hard conversation. And I think if you're straight up with folks, they'll usually get it. And I think
That's right.
And it may be that the individual that you didn't pick, you've started the clock ticking on how much longer they're going to be there. But what you can do by offering those development opportunities, maybe helping them find a seat on a board somewhere as part of their development, preparing them for that next step, investing in them, can help bridge while you're working on who's going to step into their role when they eventually leave.